Today's voiceover talent is more than just a pretty voice. Today's voiceover talent has to be a boss, a VO boss. Set yourself up with business owner strategies and success with your host, Ganguzza, along with some of the strongest voices in our industry. Rock your business like a boss, a VO boss.
Welcome, everybody, to the B.O.S. podcast. I'm your host, Ann Ganguzza, along with my lovely co-host, Gabby Nistico. Hey, Gabby.
Hi, Ann.
Gabby, today we have a very special guest with us. He is a coach, an author, a voice actor, an actor, a director, a producer, and an attorney. It is none other than the one and only Rob Sciglimpaglia. Rob, thanks so much for joining us.
Yay!
Yay!
My pleasure. How you guys doing?
Awesome. I'm just happy I pronounced your name correctly.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How many times a day do you get asked for pronunciation, Rob? Is it like, what do you do at this point?
He just laughs. I'm sure.
People, yeah, they if people don't know me, then they'll ask, and so it's probably 4 or 5 times a day, and I just say I'm used to it. So,
well, at least they try,
Rob, I worked really
their
hard.
hearts.
I worked really hard to pronounce that right, because with a last name like Ganguzza, and as I'm sure you've already mentioned to me that, my husband is Italian, not myself. So I have to really work extra hard at these things because people just assume.
good job.
So, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you actually got into voiceover as a career.
Well, I've been a lawyer for 27 years. So about 15 years ago, I always wanted to, I was a DJ in college, so I always wanted to do something in the arts, acting, whatever. So I actually took an adult education class in voiceover, just to find out what it was about. And I ended up really liking it a lot. Falling in love, finding my passion. So I, from that point on, I just, I started taking a lot more classes, cut a demo, started doing work. That led into the acting world, the on-camera world, which led into the producing world, and
You do it all.
led me to where I am now. So
Wow.
Yeah, you do it all. I find that story to be very similar amongst people, like tech people and people that, I don't know, which normally would seemingly have no creative aspect to their jobs, or people would normally think that there's no creative aspect. But I find that in a lot of people that fall into voiceover that absolutely love it because it gives them that creative outlet. And so you absolutely took that exponentially to the next level.
yeah, and I like the fact that I'm an attorney. Also, it also definitely helps in the voiceover and the acting and the production world, because there's so many legal aspects to it. That it really leads to opportunities, and it helps you understand the business and how things work. It helps open up doors.
And you are sought after by pretty much everyone in this business
Oh, yeah.
for your expertise and your knowledge and even just your feedback, because it is, we don't know who else to go to except you.
Well, yeah.
You're the guy.
I've come to you multiple times. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's us included.
I'm kind of in a unique position, because there's a lot of entertainment attorneys, but there's not a lot of entertainment attorneys that know voiceover as well as I do, plus the film industry and the TV industry and the production side. So I get to use all of that knowledge, and that's why I think people come to me and ask me questions, which is great. I love that. So I love giving back.
Well, thank you. We're very lucky to have you, so that's awesome. We were talking about this earlier before we started the recording today, that you've caught a couple of our podcast episodes and had some insights regarding a lot of the things Ann and I talk about on the business side of the industry, things like LLCs and sole proprietorship and corporations and S-corps and, the what to, when to, how to, why to, of all of those aspects of voiceover. So we'd love to get your thoughts on just that. What you think
Sure.
voice actors should be doing in terms of the foundation of their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, this is where it's really confusing, because you hear so many different things from different people, and some of the things that you hear is not 100% accurate. So that's why I'd love to tell you how my view
Clear it up
of
for
it
us, Rob.
and clear it up.
Please.
Because I mean, there's when people talk about whether they should stay a sole proprietor or whether they should form an LLC or a corporation, a lot of times they just look at it from the tax side. You know, am I going to save money taxes? And they don't look at it from the legal side. They'll go talk to an accountant. The accountant will be like, "Oh, you don't need an LLC. Just be a sole proprietor."
Yes, that's what my accountant said.
If you talk to a lawyer's going to say, "Why would you not do an LLC?" All right, look at it this way. I don't just advise voice artists as businesses, but I advise businesses. So a guy walks in my office and he says, "I want to start a pizza place." I don't tell the guy, "Well, why don't you wait and see how many pizzas you sell before you set up your LLC?" It's the same thing with a voice artist. You come walking in my office, I'm not going to say, "Why don't you see how many jobs you book before you set up your LLC?" No, you're starting a business, you start a business. The way you start a business is especially a voice artist, because you're allowed to set up an LLC. Like an attorney or an accountant, a doctor, they're not allowed to set up LLCs to shield their liabilities. They're only allowed to set up LLCs for tax purposes. So this is why one of the misconceptions comes about. But as anybody else, any other business owner, a pizza place, a voiceover artist, an actor, they can set up LLCs so that they're not personally liable for things. They can keep their business completely separate from their personal life.
Yep.
All right. So who's a voiceover artist? Who are the people that go to you guys and they say they're voiceover artists? What type of people do you guys come across in this business?
Well,
All type of people. Most of them not. Most of them are not LLCs, or if they are, it's because they have another business where they're selling a physical product. And I think the misconception that people have always said to me is, "Well, I'm not selling a physical product," or you know what I mean, and I'm doing it from home. And so, what are the risks that happen to a voice talent? Like, what sort of things could happen to them?
Most of the people that are doing voiceover have another life. They have a job. They have a paycheck. They have another business. They are retired and they have lots of assets that they're living on. All of those things are at risk. If you do something wrong, and if you're just starting out in voiceover, do you know what you're doing? Do you know how to record things and get things on time? And well, but I don't. Now we do. Yeah, sure. But when you're first starting out, like you're probably gonna mess up at some point. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get a file delivered on time, and they fire you and they have to hire somebody else and it costs them money, they can absolutely sue you. Whether they will or not, that's another question. But they can absolutely sue you. You know, one of the reasons why people get sued is if they have assets. Because when you go to an attorney, the first thing an attorney says, "I want you to sue that person." Well, does that person have any money that we can collect? So if you're getting a paycheck and you're doing voiceover and you get sued, your paycheck's getting attached.
Right.
If you own a house, your house is going to get a lien on it if you get sued and you get a judgment. All those things are things that somebody needs to, that's what they need to think about. Not like, how much tax am I going to save? It's, do I have stuff to lose and do I need to protect it? And that's why that's when you figure out if you want an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp, because all of those things protect you legally. Which one of those that you use is going to depend on your tax savings. Like you can do, there's different tax savings for each of those things. So that's how you definitely form some kind of corporation or an LLC. But go ahead.
Can you give us a breakdown on the differences between the S Corp and the ones that you just mentioned for the listeners?
Yep. An LLC is basically, you can have one member. So a voiceover artist can form an LLC themselves. And it works like a sole proprietorship as far as tax goes, because your money, you report it on a Schedule C at the end of the year. Same thing with an S Corp, but there's different things you can set up under an S Corp. Like you can set up different types of annuities and retirement plans and things like that, so that you can save money. And you can also own other LLCs or corporations under your S Corp. C Corp is its own corporation, so it's its own entity, so it pays its own taxes, and you would be paid as an employee of that C Corp. So if you're making between like $75,000 and $100,000 a year, you're definitely going to have tax savings by going to an S. If you're making over 100, you're going to have lots of tax savings by going to a C potentially. And one of the things that being an attorney, seeing some of the celebrities in the business, what they do, they all have loan out corporations. So they have an entity, either an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp that they formed, and they loan out their services, and that's who signs the contract. So their corporation signs the contract, say with Disney, and then they have an agreement between their corporation and themselves where they loan out their services, so that they don't have to give out their Social Security number. Their corporation pays all the taxes. Their corporation, there's lots of write-offs. So, like, a loan out corporation's a great vehicle for entertainers to use, and a lot of the celebrities use them. So, the liability
Very
end is the
interesting.
part as an attorney that I'm concerned about. Like, that's the part versus sole proprietor versus everything else. Sole proprietorship should just be very limited use. It should be for like somebody who's just out of college, just starting out. They don't have any money. They're not married. They don't have kids. They don't have a house. Fine. Go ahead and be a sole proprietor. Because you really don't, you're kind of judgment proof anyway. There's no one's going to be able to get
Right.
anything. But if you have stuff, you need to protect that stuff. And that's how you protect it under the LLC corporation, S or C. And then there's other things you can do with the LLC later on too. You can actually have your LLC be taxed like an S corp. So that, there's a lot of flexibility with all of those things. And the one downside is that you have to pay some fees annually. But the other good thing about being a voice artist is because that we do things internationally, and we send our files around the whole country or the whole world. You can shop which state you want to set up your LLC or your corporation in, because you're not selling that product that's in a brick and mortar building, where then you have to set up in that state where the brick and mortar business is. But our business is great because we can choose which state. So you can go to Nevada or Delaware or Wyoming or one of the states that are friendly, and that fees are not a lot.
So
it
wow,
makes it worth it.
I can go research the cost to set up an LLC in different states and then just pick a state to be based out of.
Right.
Wow, that's very cool.
So if you do it correctly, you're going to save. The money that you're spending annually it's going to be a drop in the bucket to what you're saving. So like that's the key.
What are some of the other things that you see people doing and maybe wish they did differently in voiceover regarding legalities?
They don't have contracts. They don't read the red flags, and they end up getting stiffed or worse. They'll get their work used. Like they did a spot for internet for $500, and it ends up on TV the following year, and they don't have anything in writing. So then they have to chase to try to figure out how much they're entitled to, if anything. I see that a lot.
Wow.
And I'm sure that's probably becoming a whole lot more relevant with,
Yes.
voices being used on the internet and pre-roll and that sort of thing. And is that something that you've taken on those cases before? Or is that something that immediately they should contact a lawyer regarding if they hear their voice somewhere?
Yes.
Is there a certain amount of time that they have to do this in? Because
They should contact a lawyer immediately. Most of the time what happens is, I do take on those cases, and I've recovered money for voiceover artists in those cases. And this is the kind of the normal scenario. I'll get a phone call. Hey, my friend out in Missouri just heard my radio spot that I had done a year ago, and it was only supposed to run for 13 weeks. Can you help me? Then figure out how long it was been running, so you can contact the radio station sometimes and get their reports to see how many times they've run that spot, and then we kind of figure out how much they should get, and we throw a number out. Most of the time, it's successful. Or you'll get a scenario where, well, I had this TV spot that I did, and it was only supposed to run 13 weeks, but it's running 3 years now. And you can go to iSpot TV, and you can see how many times
Right.
It's
Yeah.
run and how much they spent on the ad. So if they spent like $2 million on airtime for that ad, and you got paid $300,
Right.
then we're going after it. We're, as long as it's not, as long as you didn't sign a contract in perpetuity, because that happens too. I've had that situation where clients contact me with that in that same circumstances, but they or their agent signed a contract saying that they were bought out in perpetuity, which is awful because then I can't really do anything about it.
Let's say it's something that the voice talent negotiated on their own. Are you finding a lot of where voice talent have negotiated on their own and it wasn't through an agent? And so there really probably wasn't a contract. Maybe it was an agreement through email. Does that still hold water? An email?
There's a lot of agreements that I see with voice talent that they do on their own. Sometimes they come to me, which is good because then I can make sure all the points are hit that are supposed to be. Emails are fine, but a lot of times, many times, most of the time, all the points are not covered in emails. It'll just be the price and how
Right.
how fast the file has to be delivered. That's about it. It doesn't talk about usage. It doesn't talk about any of that stuff. And then the clients are confused, obviously, because they think, well, I've paid you $500 for this. I can do whatever I want with it.
Right.
And that's not the case.
Yep.
Because then you have copyright law that comes into this, because as voiceover artists, if we're creating the work on our own systems, we're basically a recording studio. So we own the masters. So the clients need to be smart too. And they're the ones that actually need the writing so that they can say that they own the copyright. It's a work for hire agreement. They should be sending out work for hire agreements to us as voice talent so that they do own the copyrights. So that a lot of times I can use that tactic in situations where it's just email and nothing was said about usage.
Mm-hmm.
I can say, well, my client owns the copyrights, so you're infringing, and then that will, that's very strong law on your side, to get the clients to be fair.
How much time is involved in what you're describing and all of this? Because you often hear people say that if there's a failure to pay or if you have to go track a client down in this nature, it's not always worth it. So how do you decide? When is it worth it?
It's worth it if the ad's still running. To me, it's worth it because all I do is send a cease and desist to the TV stations, all of the ones that that it's airing on, to the producer, to the client. A lot of times the end client doesn't even know about it. A lot of times they don't even know that this stuff's going on because it was they hired a producer to do the spots, and they don't know anything about they just paid a flat fee to the producer, and the producer hired the talent and stuff. So if you have to jump over the producer and go directly to the client, that usually, and a lot of times these clients are big too. They have a lot of assets. So that's how I determine if it's worth it or not.
Is it mostly length of run, or is it also length and where it's run? So, for example, say it was supposed to only run on the radio, and then all of a sudden you see it on the internet or you see it on YouTube pre-roll. How is that different, or how is that handled differently? Is it still copyright infringement, or is that a different?
It depends.
Yeah,
it depends on how you gave the license to use
Right.
it. So that's not specified at all in
Right.
email contracts. So technically that's an infringement because it's a use that you didn't license.
So even though
That's
we
a harder
didn't
one.
say it, even though we didn't say it in the email, so to be safe for if we're doing our own negotiations, it should always be, price, and then usage, and also
Right.
maybe region or location or
Yep, and time.
web,
And
internet,
how long.
regional, national, etc.
And how long? Another reason why you need contracts is because what does TV mean? I've been running across this for the past couple of years. What is TV? Does TV include Hulu, Netflix,
Right.
Amazon Prime? Like you need to put that in your contract that's TV.
That's interesting. It's considered TV or not new media, or is that just a global term?
That's you just
That's the
raised
debate,
the question.
Yeah.
Is it new media, or is it like the client's going to say it's new media, and I'm going to say for my client that it's TV because it's reaching it's played over the television and it's reaching just as many people as a television broadcast, if not more. Mm-hmm. So I consider those national TV commercials when they're on Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Prime, any of those services. So, but you have to spell that out ahead of time because you don't want that you don't want to have that debate with the client when they say that, well, we did it for New Media Internet and we have it on Hulu, so we're fine.
How well does an invoice hold up as a contract or as the acknowledgement of agreement if all of your terms are laid out inside the invoice that the client ultimately pays? Does that hold up legally or no?
No, an invoice after the fact, anything that happens after the meeting of the minds.
Oh, no, I mean pre. Like if your invoice outlines that, the duration, the use, all the things we're talking about, but that's the initial job, and then later on you find out it was abused.
I got you. Well, see, technically you're supposed to have a meeting of the minds at the beginning of your arrangement. So, like
Before the invoice.
Before everything, like when you're signing your contract, when you're making your agreement, like before money exchanges hands, or before you turn on your microphone, that's technically when the meeting of the minds has to happen, because it's easy for either you or your client to kind of forget what you guys agreed to,
And then put it on the invoice.
and kind of imagine things that maybe wasn't agreed to.
Very
And
good
so
point.
so I didn't agree to that thing on your invoice. What are you talking about? Here's what your email says. Like, so that's why anything after the fact, after the meeting of the minds,
That's an excellent point.
is not enforceable. It's like, I see this all the time, and this is not enforceable. I'll see emails to the client saying, I'm going to do this 30-second spot. It's going to cost $500. It's going to go on the internet. And it's going to be payable in 30 days. 60 days rolls around and they're still not paid. The talent will send out an invoice to the client with a 5% late charge. You can't do that. They have to agree to it ahead of time, that if they breach or they're past 30 days, they'll agree to pay 1.5% a month or whatever. It has to be laid out in your contract. Otherwise, that's not enforceable.
Can you have a terms, like a service terms agreement on your website, and would that hold water if you didn't have it in an email?
If you could prove that they saw that before you guys.
Okay. You have to
Agreed,
prove that
sure.
they saw it. Okay.
The thing that I love
okay.
the most now these days, it's the online document signing services. There's a lot of them out there. Those are the best things since sliced bread. I mean, everyone should be using those in our business, because there's no excuse for anything. You load up the template, it's there for all time. You get a client, you type in their email address on the website where the template is, it goes out, and they put their little initials in the box, and done. It's signed. It's a signed contract.
Great idea.
It really tells me that we're maybe as an industry missing a lot, that we're not
Well-
following some of these protocols.
Yeah, let me back up a second, because I'm talking about a non-union talent that's on their own, without an agent, contacting a client who probably doesn't know anything about anything about it, like nothing, less than nothing.
Okay.
If you're a casting agent, you're talking to an agent, talent agent, you're talking to producers, you're talking to studios. They all know the business. So like when you say net 30,
Right.
whatever lingo we use, they understand exactly what you already made your contract. That's all you only can, you may be able to say like 3 or 4 little buzzwords in our industry, and you've made your agreement. You can't do that with a client that, they don't know anything about what we do, and you have to spell it out for them, because that's the only way they're going to understand
Makes
what we're
sense.
talking about and what our language is. That's business custom, and business custom is absolutely enforceable as a contract. So
Oh, good to know. Well,
Very good to know. So then, as a talent that is negotiating their own, make sure that you have usage spelled out before you actually invoice, right? All of that stuff spelled out, agreed to. What determines if they've agreed to it? So you can send an email. Do they have to reply back and say yes, or let's continue?
they should, yes. If they pay, if you've given them the email, they give you the script, you read it, you send it over, and they pay, then they've accepted. They've accepted by silence,
Got it.
by that the action of paying says that they've accepted your terms. And if you have clients that are in the business, you don't necessarily, like producers that are coming to you, hiring you, you don't necessarily need to do it for them either, because they already understand. It's ones that don't understand. That's the ones that you really have to be careful. Trust your gut, people.
Oh my gosh.
If you're asking for a contract and they're not signing, something's wrong.
I think that's a great piece of advice. Like that little golden nugget that just came out of your mouth was like, okay, listen, listen to your gut. Really, that is such a priceless piece of advice.
And Rob literally has written the book on this topic and more, Voiceover Legal, which, Rob, please tell us how you can get the book, how people can get in touch with you, how they can learn more, how they can hire you.
Sure. Yeah, voiceoverlegal.com is where you can get the book. It's also on Amazon. My website is ROBSCIG, robscig.com. Or feel free to call me, 203-663-2803.
My gosh, thank you so much for taking the time out of your extremely busy day. And I think I hear busyness happening behind you.
Fax is going.
Like the fax is happening.
The fax is ringing, the
isn't
phone's
that?
Ringing, yeah.
I'd also like to give a big thanks to our sponsor, IPDTL, for our quality connection and recording so that we can actually hear that fax machine in the background. You can find out more at ipdtl.com.
Guys, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Like us. Please give us the thumbs up wherever possible. And of course, make sure to check out Stitcher and iTunes for more episodes of the podcast.
Yes, and don't forget to visit us, VOBoss.com. Sign up for that email list where you can get exclusive content and offers. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Join us next week for another edition of B.O.S.S. with your hosts, Ann Ganguzza and Gabby Nisterko. All rights reserved. Ann Ganguzza voice talent in association with 3 Moon Media. Redistribution with permission. Coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.